My guest is California Senator Jerry Hill. He is the chairman of the Environmental Quality Committee of the state of California. I want to ask him questions about three topics that I believe are important to you. One, PG&E has been shown responsible for blowing up part of a California city in 2010. I want to ask him, how is the state holding that organization responsible for what happened? Secondly, a group of oil companies, gas companies want to expand fracking in this great state. I want to ask him what measures the state is taking. What is he doing to help assure our state does not enter into fracking extensively and wind up destroying the quality of the water of the state of California? And third, education is extremely important, and that not just includes educating the children, but making sure they can learn in an environment that is conducive to that process. So with that, I'm going to start with the PG&E question. First of all,
Michael, thank you. It's great to be with you.
I'm honored that you're a guest here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And you heard my opening.
Yes.
That, am I correct, PG&E is held responsible for the deaths of 8 people in San Bruno, California in 2010, and also the destruction of about 38 homes.
You're absolutely correct. They have not been held responsible yet, and that's the problem and that's the challenge, because it's up to the California Public Utilities Commission to hold them responsible financially. They have been held responsible civilly because of the lawsuits that have been, the personal lawsuits because of the loss of life and property, to about $500 million. But it's the penalty that the Utility Commission will give them, hopefully in the next couple of months, that should be substantial.
All right, we'll come to that point of what the California Public Utility Commission should do, I guess. But what did PG&E do that they're held civilly and maybe in other ways responsible for 8 deaths in the wrecking part of the city of San Bruno?
Great question. What they did is in 1956, they installed a pipe, 36-inch pipe, under the city of San Bruno, running from Milpitas to San Francisco. That pipe was welded along the longitudinal line of that pipe. It was folded over and welded. They installed it in 56. But they did nothing to it from that time forward. They should have tested it properly. They should have monitored it. And in the 1970s, they were told by Bechtel Corporation that there was a potential problem with the welds in that pipe, and they chose to ignore it and not spend the money to make the necessary tests and to perform the tests to determine whether it was safe or not.
All right, so let me just make sure I understood this. What was the year Bechtel, which is a highly respected major construction company, informed PG&E that they better take a look at that pipe?
That was in the 1970s.
1970s. And you're saying the evidence is that PG&E decided not to do that?
Correct.
What do you think they decided not to do that? Because it's expensive?
Well, the understanding we have is that they chose not to move forward with the analysis, to study the pipe, to look at it, and to test it properly because of the cost to do that. It would not just be there, but there were other parts of that line that had similar welds that needed to be tested, and they ignored that. And that's really the problem. And the problem has been that they have diverted hundreds of millions of dollars that should have gone to maintenance, safety, and operations. They diverted that money to profits and bonuses for executives.
Profits for stockholders?
Yes.
And bonuses for executives.
Correct.
Okay.
Because in a public utility, they're guaranteed a set rate of return. They get a guaranteed profit. The only way they can look better, shine more to their stockholders, is by increasing that. And the only way they can increase it is to cut costs. And that's what they did.
Okay. So before we continue and go to what's going to possibly happen with the PUC to really hold PG&E accountable, I'd just like to ask, what has been, from what you can determine, PG's attitude with other gas pipeline systems in their franchised area?
Well, they have, since the explosion, we have put pressure on them to to identify all of the pipes, to make sure that the pipes, that the records they have are accurate and reflect recent testing so that it's safe. The problem is that even recently they have not been able to determine the accuracy of their records nor the accuracy of testing. So as they have done better, they have not done it to the level that I believe we have a safe system today.
Okay, and PG&E, what is their franchise area, by the way?
Well, it goes up through Rancho Cordova, it goes down through, I believe, down to Fresno. It's a very large area with over 5,000 miles of pipe.
Okay, now I'm not going to forget the main point, but I just want to ask, apparently you've been very active in this area trying to protect the people of California,
yes.
Right? Has your work not only had a positive impact on PG&E, but has it had a positive impact on other organizations throughout the state that distribute gas to the consumers?
Yes, the legislation that we've promoted and that has been signed by the governors in the past has gone to all utilities. It's to strengthen the entire system.
And are you happy with the strengthening?
Well, frankly, I'm happy with some of it. The problem is that every year, every piece of legislation that I author, when it goes to the committees, the utilities in California are extremely powerful, and they have a lot of money, and they use that money to their advantage. So a lot of the legislation is watered down, is forced to be to cut back, and we were able to do a few things through the budget this year that we couldn't do legislatively. So it's a battle because of the strength and the power of the utilities in California.
Okay, I'm going to come back to your legislation later, but it seems to me that the California Public Utility Commission performed an analysis, and I guess the analysis was supported by the National Bureau of Safety Standards, you know, the feds, determining who was at blame, and the PUC's folks came up with a figure that the PG&E should be fined $2.25 billion for not responding to Bechtel's suggestion that they investigate the situation to protect the safety of Californians. So $2 billion is a proposed fine that has been floated, I'd say initially by the Public Utility Commission. But I sense from something you said a little while ago that that money, that fine may not be actuated.
No, that's very true because of the way, this is a recommendation by the staff at the PUC, and this is after a few other recommendations came forward that actually would not fine PG&E at all. It gave pretty much let them off the hook, but the attorneys at the PUC were so offended by that they were resigning because of it. So they came back and redid it, and this is a $2.2 billion fine. But they've had an independent analysis before the Public Utilities Commission would look at a fine. They had an independent evaluation of the financial strength of PG&E, and that determined that they could afford to pay a $2.25 billion fine and still be a viable, successful company.
So let me see if I understand this. The PUC has thrown out a number,
yes.
a fine, and you probably are happy with that fine, I would imagine. I don't hear you saying it's too low.
No.
And so then that has to go to a judge, and then the judge may rule that, yes, PG&E has to pay that money, so they have to write a check out, maybe over a series of a couple of years, or maybe immediately, and that money goes, let's say, to the state's general fund or some other fund that benefits the state and us. So, and that's sort of
yeah, well, the process is a little different in that the administrative law judge will make a recommendation, and the 5 members of the California Public Utilities Commission, the commission members themselves, will determine what the fine is, and they could fine them nothing, and they could fine them the $2.2 billion. The way the fine is structured will give about $300 million to the state general fund, and the rest of it will go to pay for the things that we as ratepayers would have to pay for in the future, which is a good investment for us.
And do you like that?
I like that. I think we should benefit. The ratepayers, we shouldn't be saddled with more rates and higher rates in the future because they didn't do it right in the past.
Now I think I understand. So PG&E pays the fine, some of it goes to the state general fund, and instead of PG&E with the permission of the PUC, telling all of us we have to pay higher rates. Out of the profits of PG&E comes the monies that upgrade the system.
Correct.
And that would keep rates low for all of us. Oh, that's a great deal. So that's what's going to happen.
No, that's what we'd like to see happen.
Oh.
It's up to those 5 members who were appointed by the governor to make the final decision. And PG&E at this point in time, as you may have read in the newspaper, the Wall Street Journal, local papers, they've been doing a lot of public relations and PR campaign to say this is too much money, it's going to put us at a financial disadvantage, we can't afford it, we may go bankrupt, and the ratepayers will pay, and it's a sham. It really is, because they have not yet admitted responsibility for that.
Okay, and I hear there's some private lawsuits even looking to charge executives at PG with criminal behavior.
Well, I'm hoping that the criminality of that and the criminal indictments will come down from the U.S. Attorney, but also there's a shareholder lawsuit that was filed 2 weeks ago, and that's by a shareholder class action lawsuit against those executives for diverting the funds to their compensation, their bonuses, and taking it away from safety, because it's holding the company responsible for the broader amount.
Okay, so that's a governance issue, maybe?
Of the PUC, of the PG&E?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's holding them responsible.
Okay, that is good. What would you like the public to do? Anything? Or what are the main leverage organizations out there that can help to see that the state, all of us ratepayers, are treated properly?
Well, the main thing is that the governor appoint responsible commissioners to the Public Utilities Commission, and that's the challenge. And there's the president of the PUC today who, prior to his tenure at the PUC, was the CEO of Southern California Edison, and the chief counsel for the PUC. The head lawyer at the PUC prior to 2008 was a chief gas lawyer for PG&E. So we have conflicts there that are the problem.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So the California PUC, Utilities Commission, is very much run by industry.
It has been, and in fact, so much so in our legislation that I've had in the past and have currently, will force the Public Utilities Commission to actually fine and hold the utilities responsible. What happened before 2008, or I'm sorry, before 2010, was that there were no fines against the utilities, and they were never held responsible. It was self-reporting. If they violate the rules, they're supposed to tell the PUC, we broke the law, and then they would not be fined for that because they came forward. And that carrot never worked.
So you're the driving force behind legislation to try to force the PUC to be more responsible with respect to managing, monitoring, and penalizing PG&E and maybe other. Would that be correct?
That's absolutely true.
So I think you're doing a nice thing for all of us of California. I was wondering if we could go to another topic.
Sure, absolutely.
Fracking, which is simply a new up-to-date approach to getting, I guess, more oil or gas from land that otherwise it wasn't economic by other techniques to extract. I think that's correct?
Yeah, it is. That's very true.
And we have Occidental Petroleum and some other big oil companies in the state, gas companies, I guess, and they are already, and correct me, they are already fracking, but we don't know much about it. Would that be correct?
Well, that's true. They have been fracking in California, and we don't know, but since the discovery of what's called the Monterey Shale, which is in the San Joaquin Valley, there are about 15.8 billion barrels of oil there. This is comparable to what we see in the Middle East, in a massive amount of oil. And in the fracking, what they do is it's called hydraulic fracturing, and wells go down almost 1.5 miles into the ground. They go through the aquifer, the water table, they go below that, they go vertically and then horizontally for a long distance, and they pump high pressure chemicals into that, and that kind of breaks the shale. The oil comes out, brings the oil up with that contaminated liquid water. They take the oil out, and then they have to do something with the contaminated liquid. What they have been doing is taking it and pumping it down other well shafts. The fear has been, and what occurred in other states, we're not going to let that happen in California, is that it would go into these shafts, they would leak, the seals would leak and then contaminate the aquifer, and people couldn't drink their drinking water. I mean, even today, because of the agricultural toxics that were used, the nitrates and the arsenics in the past, in the valley there were over 1 million people in California today that when they turn on the tap in their house, they can't drink the water because the quality is so bad.
Okay, by the way, wasn't some of the people in this state that can't drink the water, it was because of PG&E's?
Well, that was, you're absolutely right.
Brockenridge or
yes,
something?
the Aaron Brockenridge, yes, that's absolutely true. That was
Yep.
another chemical
Yep.
that got into the water.
Okay, so these major oil companies see this big, gigantic Middle East-sized pot of oil, and they want to get it, even though this state, I believe, in terms of utilities, we have a plan, a law that I think in a few years, 1/3 of our energy must come from renewable, and we don't use much coal here, I don't think.
No,
and
we don't. We get some power from outside from coal.
So that oil they want, and we'll get back to fracking, is it for them to export to other states? Is it for them to use here?
Well, it would be used here as well as elsewhere, but it's a major source of oil and natural gas as well in there. So you got crude oil and natural gas that would be coming up. But California took the step this year by a bill, SB 4, by Senator Fran Pavley. That bill is different than in other states because now we will require that there be a permit before you can drill a well. You have to get a permit. You have to monitor the area around the well, and you have to continuously monitor that to make sure there's no leaking. And then the third element, which I think is important, is right now the oil companies will never, they consider proprietary the makeup of their formula that they use, the chemicals that they put in there. So we have no idea what those chemicals are. So how do you know what to test for or what the effect could be?
Okay.
Now they have to divulge that.
Right now, the law has passed?
The new law will require them to tell us in that permitting process what the chemicals they're placing in the ground are so that we can monitor and know exactly where they are and to make sure that they stay in the right place.
Okay. So now that the chemicals will be made known, this means the great research organizations, the Stanfords and others, Livermore, can take a look at those things and determine what we're dealing with and what environmental impact and what impact on human beings, farmland, etc., food. That should be interesting.
No, that's very true. The chemicals are we know some of them, benzene, I think, or so. They're fairly standard chemicals, but they're hazardous waste when the chemical is used and placed in that solution. So that has to be dealt with very respectfully and sensitively for the environment and especially for our water quality.
And then, so once the water and the acid goes down and the oil comes up or the gas comes up with the water and they want to dump it in other wells, which could leach into the aquifer.
Yes.
You, regulators, others would have a good idea what threats there might be to the water quality of this state.
Yes.
Now, I read a bit of that law, and I think it's called SB 4.
Yes, it is.
Senate Bill 4, and the governor has signed it.
Yes, he did.
And it has penalties, doesn't it?
It does have penalties. I believe the penalties will be determined as the bill develops, and because what they're trying to do is look at the best way to kind of apply the bill in its entirety with the permitting and the chemicals, and then how to actually monitor those wells. So there are penalties.
Okay, and now Fran Pavley down in Ventura and part of Los Angeles wrote this bill and drove it through, and you've been involved in it. Do you think this bill has enough strength and meat in it that's good for us to?
I think it does. There was some opposition to the bill at the end because they didn't think it went far enough. And far enough for many people was a blanket moratorium in California. The problem with that is that in the legislature today, those bills that were moratoriums didn't get out of the committee, so they died. So this is really the only bill that we had that could put some teeth into this to fracking, monitor it in the right way, regulate it in the right way, and protect the environment in the right way going forward.
Okay. Do you have a feel how the oil and gas industry is reacting to this bill?
Well, the oil and gas industry reacts to every bill in Sacramento negatively. If it has anything to do with putting any restriction on them or monitoring them, whether it's the low carbon fuel standard that's going to get us better gas mileage and take the carbon out of our fuel, everything that they do, they claim that it's going to be the death knell of their industry.
Good point. Before we go on to the next topic, since you are so interested in the quality of water for drinking and for use in farming, etc., I think that's correct, right?
Yes.
And just for our viewers, behind us is my water everywhere and not a drop to drink. And I made this painting to try to raise the level of discussion about threats to the quality of water, hopefully to make folks like you who are really much doing serious things in this area, make it easy for you to gain support for your message. I was wondering if we could go to another topic. I have read somewhere that a bill has been passed, money's been appropriated, but again, correct me, that will help the education system, the K through 12 in the state, and it will provide monies for, I think, two functions. One, to enable the school buildings to implement, let's say, solar energy, maybe triple or double pane windows, and other approaches to reduce carbon emissions, the use of energy, etc. And at the same time, to create an environment and programs where the children in those schools and the teachers could participate in activities, maybe in conjunction with those that solution to the buildings, so that the children could start to learn and think more deeply about the role of energy. I mean, when you and I were little kids, energy was not an issue, and now energy is becoming, you know, so important, and still a lot of adults our age cannot even approach thinking clearly about the energy needs and its effect on the economy. So maybe you could correct my thinking about what that bill is and your role in it, and maybe how it helps the people in this part of the country, you know, the peninsula.
No, it's a great question, and this was Proposition 39 that the voters voted for last year, that appropriates money to be used for basically an education and environmental and energy-saving operations. And with the bill that we did to appropriate that this year, and there'll be about $450 million this year, and for the next 4 years, about $500 million each year, that will go towards a number of things. One, in schools, to allow schools to reformulate, as you mentioned, double pane, triple pane glass, fix their air conditioning, improve their lighting so that it's less uses less energy, it's healthier, it's safer for the children to use in the classrooms, and then it'll also provide solar. All of this will create a cost savings for schools. In one of our school districts here, they're saving about $2 million every year based on the solar systems that they've installed. That money goes directly into the classroom.
Excellent.
And helps the schools there, and it'll provide a lot of jobs over the next few years as well. But more importantly is it will also provide an opportunity for the children in the schools from K through 12, and this also applies to community colleges. It will give them an opportunity to learn the benefit of good environmental sensitivity, good stewardship, why we're saving energy, what solar systems can do, how they can reduce the impact on the environment, as well as climate change, which, as we know, is a major problem.
Good. So this is a proposition, and the voters made it happen. And I just want to go back to water for a minute.
Of course.
Are you promoting a bond issue for water?
No, I'm not promoting, but there is going to be a bond issue that probably next year. But it's not. There was a bond that was going to go on the ballot in 2010, and it didn't, and it was continued to 12, and now it looks like it'll go to 2014. It will be about a $6 to $7 billion bond statewide to do a number of things, but watershed preservation throughout the state, water quality, about $1 billion of it will go to improve water quality, especially in those areas that need it. There'll be some money going for Delta in levee restoration, which is important. So there are a number of areas that are important that are necessary in order to protect the quality of water and the quantity of water in California, so that we make sure that we have the amount of water that's necessary. So that water bond will will be coming probably next year in 2014.
Okay. So we're just about finished, and you've been wonderful in addressing 3 points. And I just want to say, I hear you're out speaking about Obamacare.
Well, we are this on a regular basis. We're having kind of public forums to inform people, to make them aware of what they can do and the opportunities that the Affordable Care Act does present for them.
What position do you think California is going to play in the public perception of Obamacare?
Well, I think that California is far ahead in the implementation of this with our exchange. It started 2 days ago. It's moving forward very successfully in California. And what it will do, more importantly, and we can be the model for the country, is take those millions of people who currently are uninsured, that are now walking into the emergency rooms, that are costing us a lot more money in the emergency room than if they had normal preventative care on a regular basis. They can go to a physician and get the care they need. That's what we'll be doing.
All right, we're going to wrap up now. My guest has been Senator Jerry Hill. He's the chairman of the Energy Quality Committee. And I want to say, I think you work hard, and you need to be thanked for helping to assure the sustainability and resiliency of the state of California and the well-being of all of us. And I thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
And we are pretty much at the end of our time, but I would like to ask, would you remind me of the name of the insurance commissioner?
Dave Jones.
And he's running for re-election in...
I think next year also.
Yes.
2014.
So I know you know him, and I'd like to share, I got to meet him a few weeks ago and to chat with him, and I was impressed.
Yes.
And I will certainly vote for him.
He's a bright man, and he's done a lot of great work. He wants to protect the consumer. That's the focus, and that's been unusual in that position.
Yes, and so that's been wonderful.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be with you.
So,
Appreciate it.
So thank you so much.